Hello, everyone. I'm Michaela Parker, founder and executive director for the Alliance for Data Science and AI, or ADSA, and I'm here to welcome you to this episode of our webinar series, Building the Future of Data Science and AI in Higher Education, Lessons from Academic Leadership at the Front Line. In this series, we're calling on our colleagues in the ADSA community to share their experiences building academic initiatives and programs in data science and AI. The idea here is they will tell you what worked, maybe a little of what didn't work, and hopefully sharing their stories will help you on your own builder journey. But before we begin, for those of you unfamiliar with ADSA, we are a community of data science and AI leaders, practitioners, and educators who believe in a just, equitable future where data science and AI are thoughtfully applied in all domains for the benefit of all. You can learn more about our events and activities like this one on our website. And a quick reminder that this event, like all ADSA events, is governed by the ADSA Code of Conduct, which you can find linked at this QR code on the slide or in the footer of our website. So today's builder lessons are about standing up and sustaining campus-wide research institutes. I'm joined by my colleagues and good friends, Kyle Cranmer from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Sarah Stone from the University of Washington, who will share how their institutes came to be, how their services have evolved over time, and what it takes to sustain these services long-term. But they're going to start by giving a quick overview, I believe, of their data science and AI programs. So we'll hear from each of them, and then we'll move into the conversation and Q&A. So let's start with Kyle to hear about the beginnings of the Data Science Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Great. Thank you very much. Happy to be with you and share with you today. So I'm going to be talking about the sort of data science and AI landscape at UW. I'll try to be as quick as I can. I'm going to try to hit on a couple of things. So the focus here was really on campus-wide institutes. And so the Data Science Institute is a campus-wide organization. I'll just say a little bit about our open source program office and also something that we have on campus called the RISE initiative. And then I'll just mention a little bit about something, a newly formed College of Computing and AI, which comprises computer science, statistics, and the information school. And that's in some sense, not campus-wide in the same way, but it's sort of big news and it is maybe feed into the discussion a little bit. In terms of our institute, we were created in 2020, but that was right as COVID hit. So it was kind of paused for a couple of years. I started in July 2022 after the first kind of full director search. Our institute was, when it was founded, it came with a $10 million gift and a $10 million commitment to sponsored research from American Family Insurance, which is an insurance company that's kind of big in the Midwest. And organizationally, we sit under the vice chancellor for research. And our activities were sort of grouped into roughly 4 verticals. So one is sort of networking and community. So that includes like our affiliates program and this RISE AI collaboration headquarters, which I'll say a little bit about more later. We also have a data science services vertical that has 8 technical staff now, and that's continuing to grow. We also directly house some larger grants and have postdocs and scientists and RSEs that are related to specific research projects. And then we have a handful of initiatives that are around campus and often which involve undergrads. So that goes through our open source program office and some undergrad research and internship opportunities. And then lastly, there are a few other related activities on campus that we partner with. So there's a group called the Data Science Hub that has 3 facilitators. They do kind of carpentries like training, drop-in facilitation, and also help organize communities of practice. And we work closely with them, but they kind of had their own existence ahead of time. And then there's a new digital scholarship hub in the libraries. And we coordinate with them, and we actually have a research professor that's appointed half-half between our two groups. So this is just a pictures of our staff. So we have grown to this summer, we're likely to hit about 25 people. And so that's a mix of different kinds of profiles. And in terms of our affiliate program, this is kind of our main signature item for trying to engage faculty and staff around campus. So we currently have 66 faculty and staff, and we incentivize them in various ways and then try to get them to be really engaged. And so we can talk about that later. The next kind of campus-wide activity that I wanted to mention is, which really hits on AI, is something called the RISE initiative. So in 2024, our chancellor announced this big, she had just arrived and launched a big, initiative to try to focus on significant complex challenges. The three different areas that were announced were AI, Earth, and Thrive. So Earth is kind of sustainability and energy related. Thrive is health related, and AI is, as you would expect, AI related. But it's not really in computer science. It's really spread across campus. And that amazingly was talking about hiring 250 faculty in those different areas. And we have completed, as of the end of last year, about 50 additional hires in AI across disciplines. So that's big news. So these are, some headshots of new Rise AI faculty that have joined recently. And again, they're in departments all around campus. And then to help support them, as part of the RISE initiative, there was the idea of launching headquarters to try to do that. So I was very happy, given what's going on with data science and AI, that we had established ourselves on campus. And so the Data Science Institute is now the home of the RISE AI collaboration headquarters. And so we do a lot to try to help with networking and onboarding of those new faculty, support their research with professional scientists. We have a seed grant funding and a incubator mechanism to try to foster interdisciplinary research teams and things like that. So we can talk about that more later. And then just to mention briefly, I'm a big believer in open source, and we, through some seed funding from the Sloan Foundation, created an open source program office, and that we are working with different parts of campus to make that into a sustainable effort. And we have an internship program there that's growing quite rapidly. And we also did a survey of open source, and the survey itself is open source, so you and your institute could also execute the survey if you'd like. And then the last piece of news was this announcement just last week, I think, that was maybe it was the week before, that of a new College of Computing and AI. And in addition to the already lots of hiring that's going on, they've secured some funding, and so they're trying to hire more people really in computer science and statistics in the information school. And that there's a new building associated with that, and fortunately, that's called Mortgage Hall. So the Data Science Institute is located in that same building along with the College of Computing and AI, even though we're kind of organizationally different. And so that's what I have, and I have some links for some more information. And sorry if I was a little over 5 minutes, but close enough.
That was great, Kyle. Thank you so much. I already have so many questions, but I'm going to hold them so that we can first hear from Sarah and then jump into the conversation. So, Sarah, do you want to go ahead and share a screen and tell us about eScience?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here today, and really fun to get to do this with Kyle, since we've known each other for a long time. And I feel like our your two institutes and my one institute have sort of grown up together in many ways. So as Michaela mentioned, I'm Sarah Stone. I'm the executive director for the University of Washington eScience Institute, where we're really focused on partnering to transform research and education with data science and AI. We sit outside of the departmental or college structure as an independent institute that serves the entire campus community. And I think we'll kind of dig into some of those structures later, but that kind of gives you where we're situated on campus. And we actually report to 3 deans and to the vice provost for research and the provost. So eScience has been around for a long time, over 15 years. And over that time period, we've worked across a lot of different subject areas through our various programming. We have over 220 affiliate faculty. We've funded in various capacities, either partially or fully, 159 postdocs, again, representing a breadth of fields, and really focused on bringing them together around methodological challenges that are then being applied across this vast array of disciplines. While we aren't ourselves a department, we have helped to foster conversations and instantiate graduate programs across 23 different departments or units on our campus. And we house the undergraduate data science minor We don't have a data science major on the UW campus. Those graduate programs that have data science options or pathways that we've helped create. But at the undergraduate level, data science sits in the context of a minor. It was launched, well, I guess, about 5 years ago, and it's grown to be the second largest minor on campus. This is our team. Similar to what Kyle mentioned, our team includes data scientists that represent disciplines. We often say from astronomy to zoology and everything in between, but we're not that many people. So we represent a breadth of disciplines, certainly. And more recently, which is something that would be interesting to talk about in the follow-up conversation, we've built out a team of professional research software engineers. We have a beautiful physical space on campus, and this was done in partnership with the libraries. As Kyle mentioned, we work really closely with the libraries as well, both having a space that is a former library and also with their open scholarship commons. And we've really felt that it was important to have this physical convening space, although certainly we also work through virtual connections and virtual spaces as well. In terms of what we do, we have some core programs. We've tried to create very easily accessible, low barrier programs, including all the folks you saw in the previous image, provide office hours, which is a free consultation covering a range of research topics and methods. We do this one-on-one as well as through drop-in office hours and focus topics. We think a lot about informal education and how to fill the gaps for people who can't go back and become freshmen and enroll in those sorts of courses. We have a campus-wide UW Data Science and AI seminar series. We offer a number of workshops and short courses, which I'm interested to talk about how we've been transforming those to incorporate more generative AI tools. We've also for a long time run a Hack Weeks as a Service program where we bring together groups of people, usually for about a week in a disciplinary space or around a satellite mission. And we foster a mix of tutorials, peer-to-peer learning, and project hacking work. In terms of deeper research collaborations, we currently run a data science and AI accelerator. This program replaced a program that we ran for about 10 years called the Data Science Incubator. This is an opportunity for faculty, postdoc staff, and graduate students across the 3 UW campuses to work one-on-one with a data scientist. Typically, this is for 3 to 6 months, but this can be a variable duration and intensity from sort of sprint projects to slow burns. We've done 87 projects on campus since 2014, and this program now runs year-round. I mentioned briefly, we now have this team of scientific software engineers. They're supported by a $10 million+ initiative from Schmidt Sciences. They work on projects both with Schmidt Science-funded researchers as well as with UW researchers. And they're really focused, many of them come from industry, so they're bringing industry best practices and delivering open source reusable software to research. Lastly, I'll just mention there's a relatively new UW initiative that started last fall called AI at UW. We have a newish, I guess like 9-month-old vice provost for AI. The AI at UW launch event was really focused on classroom applications of AI, and we have a new Seed AI award process that is focused again on classroom implementation of AI and development of AI tools. And eScience is supporting this initiative both in terms of organizational structure and technical expertise for those awarded.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I already have a bunch of questions, but I'm not going to go totally off script, even though I'm tempted to. Let's actually just go ahead and start with the first question that I think we had talked about, which is you gave us a very nice overview of kind of the birth and evolution of your institutes. I wonder if you could just share a little bit more about what it was like in those early years, particularly in terms of like sustainability. And are there any lessons learned in terms of like things that you tried that maybe didn't work out, or maybe the opposite, things that went better than expected in the early years? And I don't know if either one of you wants to just jump in or.
You want to start, Kyle?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I think actually, eScience has been around for a long time. UW's Data Science Institute is actually pretty new, right? So it was launched and then COVID hit, so it kind of had this strange sort of stalled launch. And then there was a director search, and then whatever, I got started. So when I started in 2022, we were 4 or 5 people, and it had been around for a little bit, and there was a lot of emphasis on trying to since American Family had given us a gift and there was a commitment to sponsored research, like trying to make sure that that was being tended to, but it was a strange time to get started. So there was there was, and that was actually one of the challenges, I'd say, is that, well, partially the affiliation with a large funding institute, and was originally called the American Family Insurance Data Science Institute. So a lot of people thought that we either were part of American Family, were only interested in insurance. And also a lot of the activities at the beginning were about trying to do the sponsored research, follow through on that. And so when I started, I had to try to kind of, still respect the gift from American Family and work with them as partners, but also somehow try to, undo a little bit campus perspective that we were just about doing insurance, or, and so then but also, what was the vision of the Institute was not very well articulated at that point. And so I had to try to kind of get attention again, which is harder once, because you haven't just launched. It got launched in the past already. So, but then we didn't have a kind of a data science services element. So we started that and started hiring people, and then started pulling together a few big grants, and then started our affiliates program. And then, it took a couple of years to kind of essentially rebrand ourselves and but still recognize the like really great partnership that we have with American Family. So maintaining those two while also kind of changing the narrative was a little challenging. But then I think that's gone quite well. And the fact that we then got named to be the lead of this Rise AI initiative after just really a few years was great progress, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll follow up on the Rise AI initiative in a little bit. But Sarah, do you want to tell us a little bit about those early years at eScience, which I recognize also has been around for a lot longer than the DSI?
Yeah, so eScience started in 2008, and it was through a line item in the state budget. So there were some very forward-thinking faculty and the provost at that time, Ed Lazowska really being foremost of those faculty, and recognizing that there was going to be, I think, to use the language of the time, a data deluge across all these different disciplinary spaces, and that the university really needed to think about how we were going to upskill and support researchers in engaging with, at that time, really data science tools and techniques, and build that capacity. And that recognizing that there was a need not just in STEM fields, but really across the entire campus, given the kinds of tools and approaches to research that we're developing at that time. And so they went directly to the state and got a small amount of funding to start the eScience Institute. And that was really the first, what would that be? Like the first 5 to 8 years, 5 to 7 years of the Institute was at a pretty modest level of funding. And it was really a handful of people who spent, a fraction of their time answering data science questions. And it was really through support from the Morris and Sloan Foundations, through the Morris Sloan Data Science Environments, that we received support, also in concert with support that came from the Washington Research Foundation, where we were able to really build out the Institute into the form closer to what it is today, And we were extremely fortunate to have that was very flexible kind of funding. And we were able to explore building out what does it mean to have a data scientist role on a university campus that's a prestigious role outside of sort of tenure track appointments. And that's many of our programs originated at that time. They have shifted and iterated over time, but does that answer your question, Michaela? I'm not.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we can dig into the specific programs a little more, but it sounds like both of you are bringing up a launch that was tied to a substantive amount of funding, right? The American Family Insurance or the more Sloan Data Science environments. And I'm wondering how you're now thinking about sustaining the programs that launch under those big initial funding moving forward.
Yeah, maybe I can just say something quickly on that, and then I'll pass it to you, Kyle, which is what we were able to do by the programs that we developed, particularly through the more Sloan data science environments. We were able to show that those were serving a need on campus, and to document that, and to then take that to the provost and ask for sustained funding. And that doesn't fully support us at this point, but that is a substantial portion of our costs. And I know we'll probably talk more detail. What are the other things? But that was a successful mechanism. But of course, in order to be able to show that value, having that initial support was critical, really.
Yeah, Kyle, do you have a similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I think that when it was started at UW a little bit later, so I think the success of more Sloan and the other kinds of, and I mean, ADSA had been launched, and so data science at various universities was there, and so I think the university recognized it needed to do something, but there was somewhat related to the new college. There were lots of discussions about what should that something be, and so the gift also just kind of helped crystallize that decision. And American Family also wanted to see something that had a more campus-wide feel to it. So that was helpful. There is some kind of core funding from the university that's kind of related to the state budget, which is good. So there's some core administrative something that makes sure that things run. But we've grown well past that, and a lot of that has to do with flow of research funding and things. But I would say that, for instance, I was coming from NYU, and we were part of also the more Sloan effort there, and we had done a survey at one point asking about what are the needs for data science services, and actually Sarah and the University of Washington carried out that survey as well. That was one of the first times we actually open sourced the survey so other people could do it, and the little script to analyze the results and things. And so I had fortunately I had the results from NYU and the results from Washington to show when I got here. And so it was really easy to try to make the case if we were going to go for this kind of data science services piece. At the same time, though, we didn't get any additional funding to support that. So that had to bootstrap it and then establish some funding that's allowed it to grow. So even though people kind of agreed in the model, there was not additional money to actually bootstrap the data science services piece. So that was a little tricky.
Yeah, maybe we can just spin right off of that to data science. I don't know if it's expanded out to AI, but services sort of writ large in your institutes. You both have mentioned technical staff that you have that are doing direct research and some grant funding that's coming in that way. Are there other aspects of housing and supporting professional staff at your institutes that you want to bring up or talk about financially, like for their salaries, but also just professionally, or other ways that your institutes kind of support that role?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to start, Sarah?
Well, one thing I can mention is for quite a long time, we've had data scientists that were hired directly through the eScience Institute who spend all of their time with eScience. But even for maybe I'll circle back to those positions. And then we also have what we tend to call research scientist positions, which is really just nomenclature. They do many of the same activities as data scientists, but they're hired through other units on campus, and they spend some of their FTE with us, supporting some of the various programs that I mentioned in the opening. And I just want to note, that's been a really effective structure for us because it's allowed us to gain traction in some of these other departments because they have visibility in their home department as well as in this relationship with eScience. And it's allowed us to cover more areas of expertise, both in disciplinary spaces, but also technical areas of expertise, without, without covering the full cost of their positions. And what the other these are typically we're covering 50%. I would say it's generally been 30 to 50% of their FTE. And typically the other percentage, many of them are writing their own grants and covering portions of their own salary, or they're written into grants of, working directly with a PI in their home department. And we've been able to be pretty flexible, as their grants, sort of come wax and wane. And yeah, I just think that I just wanted to call that out because I haven't heard that structure at other places. And I just would say that's been really useful for us. And we have an MOU process and those things, which I'd be happy to share if that's of interest to anybody on this call.
Yeah,
and
I
then
was hoping you would mention that because it does sound like a fairly unique opportunity and just to make this clear to the audience, those positions are, when you say housed, it means that their FTE lines are in a different department, and that gives you reach into those departments, and you're effectively kind of buying out some of their time. And I think it's been a very successful model, I think, for the eScience Institute.
Yeah, and I think we've had people in those roles now for 10 plus years, that when it's been a good fit for them and a good fit for us. As I think probably everybody on this call knows, those kinds of positions often are soft money positions and can feel very tenuous. So I think having sort of 50% guaranteed salary has been really helpful. And we've had many people transition through those roles and then go into faculty appointments as well. So it can also be kind of a unique stepping stone or way to continue to get to do research, but also there's also the service component, and that's also our data scientist positions. They also continue to be active in their field of research as well as supporting these service programs. So they all have this mix of research independence and supporting the service activities. I'll just pause there. I can talk about other positions, but Kyle, I want to.
That's great. I would like to hear about Kyle's position.
I'm actually curious to learn some more about it because, in some sense, I think we started a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I don't know, we don't want to go back to like old history of things, but like NYU, we were trying some models and it was et cetera. And so when we came here, we got to kind of start from scratch with a picture in mind. And one of the things was, for the types of profiles that we're talking about, it's, they are often soft money positions and often they don't have very good job security, and that's not great. So what I tried to do is sort of decouple the appointment from the source of funding. So we hire data scientists and software engineers with the kind of long-term renewable contracts, which are, as permanent as you can get basically. And then and with the kind of understanding that we believe there's going to be a flow of soft money and grant opportunities and et cetera. And so that means also when we're searching for people, we need people that are, like understand that that's the setup and that they're kind of happy and see that as a fulfilling thing. But we also have a path where we hope that if, people hopefully establish big relationships that last for a long time with certain departments, and that's happening. We have, people that have just done, now multiple years of significant projects with, specific groups. And then at some point they have a lot of expertise there, and then they can start to write grants themselves, and at some point, if they can fully support themselves, that's great. And so that's kind of part of the professional development as an opportunity, but there's also not an expectation. Some people, there's not an expectation you need to somehow support yourself. And I've done a lot of exploring with different kinds of roles. So we've had 2 research professors now, and one of them transitioned as now tenure track faculty in statistics, which is great. And the other one is this kind of joint position with the libraries, and she's actually the associate director of the data science hub, and previously was tenured in math and left that position to do something different. So a lot of people that are like interested in these different kinds of roles, and so it's a lot of just looking for people that are happy to be research active, but and fit this kind of profile. But I do think that it would make a lot of sense to try to complement what we're doing now with something like what Sarah described, because we have situations where there are people that have enough funding that they can largely support like a kind of a staff scientist or research software engineer or something like that. But if we could have a fraction of their time with us, that could also be great. But we sort of informally have something like that, but nothing, as formal. Yeah. I guess we do with the libraries now that I think of it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful to see the different trajectories. And actually, I do want to talk a little bit more about what role those positions have in your institute outside of their own research or supporting research across campus. Sarah, you mentioned the informal education opportunities that eScience offers, workshops and short courses, and that AI tools might be coming into that a bit more. I wonder if you want to expand on that.
Sure. Yeah, so for a long time, and I think Kyle has too, we've offered software carpentries workshops that, going back 10 plus years, offering those quarterly. What we started to see, and Kyle, I'd love to hear if this is the case too for you guys. So going back even 5 years, we would offer the software carpentry quarterly, which is like intro, for those in the audience, intro programming. It's usually, we run it as a 4 half-day workshop, and then the second 2 half-days are a deeper dive into either Python or R, or both. And those used to fill to capacity, and we would have a waiting list long enough to fill for the next time. That was regularly the process. In the last couple of years, those numbers there started to be less interest. And then we advertised, I guess we ran it in winter quarter. And we had 10 people sign up. So we didn't even fill it. And we are assuming that this is because there's just a different level of interest or need in engaging with, sort of intro programming. I presumably
when AI
because
can do it for you now.
Yeah, either AI can do it or AI can teach you how to do it, or you can do some combination of those things. And so, so we are sort of thinking about, do we still do that, or do we think about a different model for some of that real intro programming work, and how we collaborate with departments on campus and the way that they're doing that. But increasingly, we're developing tutorials and workshops on, we've certainly been doing, machine learning focused workshops for a long time, but we're a lot of, we're integrating in some, of the generative AI approaches, and thinking a lot, what we hear from researchers a lot is they're not sure how to choose which tool to be using. And so more focused on helping to match what they're trying to do with the appropriate tool. And so that's that AI ABCs is kind of a landscape of what's available and how to fit your research to what's, what tools are out there. And then we are also thinking about how to best support people doing vibe coding, and doing that in a way that's, actually good and reusable, and right. Sustainable, well documented, all the things. Yeah, and I would say, and we're very active in thinking about what are people doing for themselves, and where do they actually still need support from an institute like ours, and how do we think of, because AI is accessible, I would say, really in a way that data science wasn't for people who don't have programming experience. How do we upskill to the campus? So we're thinking a lot about scale now in a way I feel like we weren't as much previously.
Can I just dig in before you jump in, Kyle, a clarifying question? So when you're thinking about helping faculty choose AI tools, or even with the literacy, how are you collecting that information on need? Are you using your office hours or doing webinars, or how are you getting at the needs across campus? Or is that just starting?
No, well, I would say I don't think we're doing it very well yet. We are relying on there's been some surveys, campus-wide surveys, not that we've conducted, but that have been conducted centrally, related to AI. But they've been a pretty broad brush about AI, not necessarily specifically about the tooling, but there's been some questions in that space. Through our support of these Seed AI classroom implementation of AI awards, there's about, I think, 35 of those that went out about a month ago. From as the technical support for those, we're also learning what people are trying to do, although that's really more in the classroom space. And then I would say through the questions that come in through office hours, through proposals that we get through our accelerator program, we can see to some extent which way the winds are blowing, but that's still a limited sample compared to the huge size of our campus. So I would say there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, yeah. Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, we're doing various kinds of surveys, and then there are just lots of people doing various types of surveys, not just about tools, attitudes, needs, like feedback about research, computing on campus, et cetera. Also through the hiring process, you get, there was like, we're in the process and just did a lot of hiring. So talking to those faculty about what they, you get a sense of what's on people's minds. So, but there's a lot of input and a lot of questions. And then, universities also trying to go through some kind of like, readiness and, AI readiness and literacy types of activities. And how does this fit into education? So I think the hardest part right now is also just how do you organize all of that? So fortunately, this Rise AI initiative has a little bit of a mandate to be a campus-wide AI conversation. And so it allows us to have some events, and to also, if we put out a survey or something, we're a kind of known entity to be asking such a question. But this is all moving quickly. So I think over the next year, we're hoping that we're in a much better place. I would say there's a lot planned in terms of trying to get that landscape analysis. So.
Yeah, yeah, and that really regarding that Rise AI initiative, that sounds really cool. I wanted to dig in just a little bit more, and whatever you can share there. So 250 hires, that's a lot. Like, where is that funding coming from?
Yeah, so the 250 is like it's across the three areas, so roughly in thirds. But it was roughly 50 additional hires for AI that was sort of a campus, a matching situation. So departments would be doing hiring already. They need to kind of demonstrate they were going to be doing hiring that fit within some confines.
Oh,
And then it was set up as a sort of match. So it's like kind of 50 additional hires on top of what would be normal hiring. But that's still a lot. And well, when it was announced, that it was before some administration changes and things. The university is in pretty good shape financially, and actually it wasn't a philanthropic gift, and it wasn't some special state funding. It was like the university was just basically in a position to be able to do something ambitious. And so fortunately, that's still, they didn't give up on that whole thing. So we're still following through, but it is certainly more complicated, a little bit more uncertain, and also given other financial uncertainties, it requires more leadership, I would say, to say that we're still sticking the course with this, given everything that's going on. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even it seems like almost that UW, Madison, right? I have trouble with that. Yeah. It's almost leaning in more because you mentioned that new College of Computing and AI, right? And I'm wondering how, and maybe it's too early to say, but like how is it envision the relationship between the DSI, the Rise AI, and the new college, right? Like, is one an umbrella? Are they satellites of each other? What's happening there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely complicated, and it's also one of the difficulties that UW-Madison's a very distributed campus. And when we start trying to talk to the people on the outside, like either industry or try to have partnerships, we don't want to like bore them with all of the organizational details about how everything works and so trying to kind of develop a more just like unified, streamlined, like story for like, this is what's going on with data science and AI in Madison is a difficulty. So in some sense, the Data Science Institute it's a campus-wide, research institute that's helping everyone, while the college is, the college. And, it's also not the only place where AI is happening. And we have electrical and computer engineering and et cetera, have, a lot of strong people. And then, but, again, you don't really want to bore everyone with all of those details. So, so Rise was really like largely like a hiring initiative, that's and so long term, partially what we're trying to figure out is, okay, now that there's this hiring initiative, what does that turn into in terms of like durable, sustained,
Right.
long-term institutional structures, and how do they fit with or connect to the new college? And so I think right now it's working pretty well. We talk a lot, but the Data Science Institute, in some senses, I'd say like the broad outreach of use-inspired kind of research across campus, and the college is kind of the disciplinary core, and we work together, and then they're also doing new hiring. So, but yeah, that is, I think, the current challenge right now is just understanding what those relationships are, aligning a bunch of incentives, and trying to like streamline communications to kind of capitalize
Right.
on what all's going on. But
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. That really makes sense. Since I'm going to pause from our normal questions and take some from the chat since we have some there. Let's see, this first one, what is the best way to run data science programs when starting out, modular format or semester format?
yeah, I mean,
Guessing they're
if that means
referring
on
to
the
education, but I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a whole topic. I mean, but right now I'm the data science degree programs are at UW-Madison are run primarily through statistics and computer science, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not really something that I oversee. I mean, we could talk about it, but I don't have I'm not also exactly sure what's meant by modular format there, but in addition to like kind of standard courses and things like that, there's a lot. I think both Sarah and I have mentioned there's a lot of more like informal types of education
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, and we're working a lot also in terms of experiential learning opportunities, undergraduate research, and things like that are kind of either add-ons or integrated into existing courses, but provide different kinds of experiences for students. And I think there's a lot of thirst for that right now.
Right. Yeah, I'm envisioning that it is a big question, especially with AI, whether to continue supporting. And I think we all agree that degree programs are still very valid and important. But you often hear about badging and credentialing and other ways for people to get that same training. And so maybe that's kind of the difference that's being gotten at with that question. Sarah, did you want to add anything? Again, recognizing you're both running research institutes, and so formal education is less in your purview.
Yeah, I guess I would say, like, to date anyway, University of Washington hasn't taken the approach of creating like a department of data science or a college of data science or AI. We've really focused on integrating data science and AI into the existing departmental and major structure. The role that we played, again, as Michaela pointed out, because we, as a research institute, was to bring together sort of the relevant or interested departments to have discussions about what are the core elements of, historically a data science education, and that led to the development of a framework for data science options at the undergraduate and at the graduate level, actually two different more advanced graduate data science option, and then a standard graduate data science option, and then an undergraduate data science option. Thinking about what are those core components, and I guess really thinking about that doesn't look the same across all disciplinary spaces, and I guess taking the approach that it shouldn't look the same across, like that what it means to be to have the right level of data science knowledge, as I'll just say from Michaela and my home discipline as an oceanographer, can be quite different than what it looks like for a computer scientist or a neuroscientist or a digital humanist. And that we've tried to build programs that have that flexibility, so that while there are sort of the core foundations of data science literacy, there's flexibility to take courses that are most appropriate and relevant in that disciplinary space. I don't think that quite answers your question, but that is kind of the approach that we've taken at the University of Washington. Of course, that could always change, and I think this is being rethought also in the face of AI. We have a task force that's exploring development of an AI minor, and how or is that different from a data science minor, and how would they play or not play well together?
Yeah, and this next question I think maybe would be useful to spin towards the professional staff. The question is, what is the criteria used to select candidates to join data science program. And here I'm going to interpret program to mean the professional data scientists. When you hire them or when you reach out to support, Sarah, in your case, these research scientists that have a foot in a different department, what kind of backgrounds are you looking for?
Yeah, so I would say we try and have both a disciplinary depth or breadth, so to cover, arts and humanities, social sciences, natural and physical sciences. We don't have many data scientists that come from, we have none that come from a CS background currently. Make sure that I have that right. We do have some that come from like applied math, or certainly many have a strong statistical background. But I would say by and large, they're folks who got really interested in using these techniques in the context of their own research and found themselves spending more time in like tool development and writing code than in other aspects of their work, and really enjoyed that. And also are people who, while they continue to be active in their home, their home disciplinary space, they like to work across disciplines. They get really excited about opportunities to take something that's been developed in one space and think about how it might be applied in another. And I mean, I'm always blown away by the curiosity of the group. I would say that's like if you were to say like, that can be hard to look for in an interview process, but the people who end up on our team are inherently curious. They like to learn about what's happening, not just in their field, but in other fields. And they're very interested in meeting people where they're at in terms of skill level. And I would say we look for people who do that in a way that doesn't feel like it's valuing certain kinds of knowledge, in the sense of, I think and maybe this is becoming less true, but there are parts of our campus that have felt intimidated by coming and coming to talk with people about these tools. And so we really look for people who are value different kinds of learning and expertise. Again, those are hard things to draw out in interviews, but certainly happy to have a conversation about that. I don't know if, I guess that may not be enough specifics for what you're looking for. I will say most of our data scientists have PhDs. So these are PhD level researchers typically. On the research software engineers, that's generally not true. It's a mix of bachelor's and master's, many coming directly from industry.
Kyle, do you have staff you're hiring that you could speak to? And I also want to make sure that you get a chance to say something more about OSPOs. I don't know if that can weave into this or not.
No, I mean, I think very similar to what Sarah had to say. We do have, some people with computer science background, but then they also focused on like computer science in a biotech situation and then worked in labs doing, something very different from CS, and we have people from, that have ecology backgrounds and psychology and chemical and biological engineering. So we are trying to have that breadth as well. I think it's hard if you can only hire one or two people, it's very difficult. Yeah. And so one thing that was great, at some point we rejiggered things so that we were able to hire kind of in small cohorts. And then I think if you can get in a situation, which is not so easy, but where you try to hire more than one person at a time, then you can try to look for that breadth as part of a portfolio of people you're hiring. And that is, if you can get into that situation, is really helpful, because it also depends on what kind of services you're trying to provide, but it was a huge help for us. And then yeah, I think the curiosity is one part, and then just people that they are aligned with wanting to do research, and they're kind of open to working on different kinds of projects, and the people that we have all love that aspect of it. They like the diversity of different projects, and so curiosity is maybe a little bit hard to probe, but I think the idea that people perk up and are interested in different topics, you can usually get a sense of that pretty easily during the interview.
Yeah, great. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on in my written questions. I guess, are there any lessons learned or challenges that you could share? One of our questions was about the business model that you use, upsides and downsides, but I kind of want to expand that a little bit beyond just financials and sustainability. Like, is there something that came up in the growth and evolution of your institutes that you kind of feel like, yeah, we wouldn't do that again? And it's fair to say I can't talk about it.
Yeah, I have to think
It's
a
a
little
tough
bit more
one.
about the right version of that. But maybe if I think of something good to say, I'll come back to that. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, and it can be context dependent. I understand that, you're each while
Yeah.
you're thinking about that, the other thing I was considering asking is again this question of right services. So Sarah touched a little bit on it's early in the AI revolution to understand really where all the needs are. In terms of the services that your institutes are offering all of campus, like how do you decide what is the right service?
Well,
Yeah.
I think for us having these open office hours that are
Mm-hmm.
just a place to point lots of different types of questions that come to us has been really helpful because it's a
Mm-hmm.
way not to ever turn anybody away, but also to I don't know, have a place to point them even when because we can't go to do deep dives with everybody who's interested.
Right.
Um, and we haven't found that we're oversubscribed in those, which always surprises me. And it tends to be manageable in terms of the interest that we get there. And that's also a way for people, it's a lightweight way to start to get engaged with eScience. And then when we've tried to structure our program so that when, sort of it outgrows, like there's so many questions, like somebody keeps coming back to office hours, we're like, oh, okay, well, you might want to submit an accelerator proposal, because that's an opportunity to have an opportunity to work do a deeper dive with a data scientist. But we are always trying to emphasize that we're not structured in a way that we're doing some magic for you and giving it back, and then the researcher takes it forward. We really try and structure things so it's a shared learning experience. So ideally, whoever we're working with, and that could be a grad student, could be faculty, research staff, they're coming away with a greater ability to continue to do that work on their own. Or, sometimes we get the opportunity to work with a faculty member and it sort of influences how their whole lab is working. Like maybe we help them identify what's the right workflow for the types of data that they're working with. And that's I'm not even remembering what your initial question was, Michaela. But
It's fine. I love where you went with that. That was fantastic because I was talking about right sizing services and
yeah,
instead you explain the philosophy behind it, which is really important, right? That these aren't just a one-way street. And you even actually touched on the other version of right services in terms of like right can also mean what is our institute capable of supporting right now, right? Like it would almost be just as bad if you suddenly had a flood of people into one program that you were not staffed up to deal with. So like there's a lot of interpretations, and so I appreciate
I do think it's important to
perspective.
have channels, and we have been thinking more
Mm-hmm.
recently about pathways for people to move through our different offerings,
Mm-hmm.
particularly on the like the workshop and trainings we're doing, so that like if we, because it's always this challenge when you don't have prerequisites or some of those structures, that whoever shows up at your workshop, they may have varying levels of technical background. And that can make it slow to start or can increase the attrition when you're offering a workshop, because people sort of show up and then they discover, oh, I don't quite have the right background, or you have to the people who are more advanced end up dropping out because you have to start at a different baseline and they're already beyond that. So we're trying to think about how we can, much in the way I guess formal curriculum do this, right, to point students to programs, but so that we can, because increasingly we're seeing that people want to do trainings on more advanced topics, and that didn't used to be as true 5, certainly 10 years ago. So we're trying to think about how we can like sort of make sure that people have those baseline kinds of competencies, so that we'll be able to move at the pace we'd like to in the next training. And so that's, I would say, something that's evolving for us.
Yeah. Kyle, do you want to also touch on the OSPO services that you offer?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in some sense, true of OSPO, but also what we're doing with data science services, and also to some extent with RISE, is that it's also just I mean, we're growing and everything is changing, that we're having those conversations all the time. And so I feel like we're constantly adapting, like in that sense. And so, and another point about like what would you do differently? I mean, I think one part is it's not exactly the same question, but there were things that we thought, okay, we're going to prioritize doing this and this and this, and at some point we'll get to these other things. But then, new opportunities arise, and sometimes it's just like something is just very easy to move forward on and is clearly valuable. The other thing is nice to do, but it's going to take 2 years, or there's like some obstruction there that you weren't expecting. So, things evolve differently than maybe you have in mind. And so we definitely are kind of constantly reevaluating. But with the new faculty coming on with Rise, we're like, okay, we're here, we're trying to help support you. We have some resources. What is it that you need? And, we're hearing from them sometimes not what we expected. And that's also true, like for the open source program office. We started the internship program, originally had funding for like 5 interns. And then we started trying to engage with faculty, and every once in a while we'll get a faculty member that'll be like, "Oh, this is the thing that I would like from you," and you're like, "Oh, that was like not at all what we thought we would be doing, but that makes sense. Let's see if we can make that happen." And so we're just trying to be kind of responsive to the things that actually people need or are asking for. But then the internship, has grown, and at some point, partially just because I'm bad at saying no, it grew and grew, and then I was like, okay, I'll figure out how to get funding for additional. So we had 400 applications for our internship program last spring, and we're at 25 interns now. But we've been able to find other kinds of sources of funding. But with what's going on with AI and undergrads and computer science trying to find jobs, the having like an internship or some kind of special something that's not coursework is like incredibly valuable right now. So the demand is just like completely through the roof. And now we're having discussions of like, how do we scale that to something potentially like much larger? And so that's interesting, but like wasn't anticipated, 2 years ago. So
yeah. Yeah, adaptability and flexibility. That's really the name of the game right now. And everybody's feeling that, the constant move of the technology. We are at time, unfortunately, so I didn't get to all of the questions in the chat. I'm sorry. I do see at least one person in here really wants to see your MOU, Sarah, so I can connect you to Marianne.
Oh, great. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I could keep talking with you guys for another hour, but I think we should probably let the audience go. It was really wonderful to see you both.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Nice to see you too.
Yeah,
nice to see you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.